Welcome to Reasonable Suspicion, helping managers fight workplace substance abuse. Fighting workplace substance abuse by requesting a reasonable suspicion test for an employee is one of the hardest and most complex challenges you'll face as a manager. That's because it's difficult to initiate a discussion of this delicate and personal topic. Confrontations rarely proceed smoothly and happily, and employees are often resistant at first, and they may offer unusual explanations, the purposes of which are to have you dismiss your concerns about the need to request a reasonable suspicion test. Here's why you should get involved. The number one reason is safety. By stopping an impaired employee from driving a vehicle or operating machinery, you may prevent an accident that can cause permanent harm to the worker and others. The employee may enter treatment and result in the recovery and return of a valuable worker. The key is to acquire knowledge and gain awareness. If you know what to look for and what to do, you can proceed with confidence and provide potentially life-saving support. Now let's look at a program overview. In this course, we'll look at 5 different skills. Skill number 1, sharpening your observational powers. Skill number 2, taking a proactive role. Skill number 3, documenting your suspicion. Skill number 4, acting on the drug testing policy. And skill number 5, communicating your suspicion to the employee and referring to testing. So, let's begin. Skill number 1, sharpen your observational powers. Here, you'll learn to recognize the signs and symptoms of substance abuse so that you can intervene sooner rather than later for everyone's good. How do you recognize the signs and symptoms? Employees who abuse drugs or alcohol rarely ask for help and almost always try to hide their affliction and put their best face forward. If you know what to look for, you can collect clear evidence that confirms impairment, and you can intervene sooner rather than later. You have to learn to observe carefully. There are early warning signs. There are behavioral changes, such as when a normally social person withdraws from coworkers. A typically upbeat or positive communicator turns quiet and avoidant. A reliably punctual employee becomes prone to tardiness or absenteeism. And there are some later warning signs: refusal to do assigned tasks, high levels of confusion, loss of productivity, and inconsistency. You have to know your employees. Initiate friendly conversations and make eye contact with employees on a regular basis. If you do that, you will be more likely to notice uncharacteristically slurred speech, glazed facial expression, unsteady gait, glassy or bloodshot eyes, or dilated pupils. A change in behavior is the key. Observe any erosion in the employee's demeanor or appearance. For example, when a well-kept individual starts to dress sloppily or exhibits poor hygiene, such as unruly hair or body odor, or a highly motivated team player becomes sarcastic or emotionally detached, or a calm, composed employee begins to display frequent mood swings. And there are other signs: a change in attendance, sudden increase in the amount of sick leave taken, frequent unexplained absences during the workday, verbal conflicts or engagement in physical tussles with coworkers, complaints from coworkers. Third parties may hint at substance abuse or imply knowledge of a problem, and an overall increase in complaints regarding an individual. Now, here's a warning. Substance abusers are 10 times more likely to miss work, 3.6 times more likely to contribute to an on-the-job accident, 5 times more likely to file a workers' compensation claim, and 33% less productive. And likewise, here's a tip. Develop a simple checklist that you can use to detect patterns of possible substance abuse among your employees. Create your own reminder to sharpen your observational skills. Did you know more than 70% of substance abusers hold jobs? Among workers ages 18 to 34, 1 in 4 used drugs in the past year, and 1 worker in 3 knows of drug sales in the workplace. Now, here's a true or false question. You will notice the same patterns of behavior regardless of whether someone has been using alcohol or illegal drugs. The answer is false. Marijuana users may have bloodshot or glassy eyes and a nagging cough. Cocaine users may demonstrate excessive energy and enthusiasm when they first experiment with the drug, but show wild mood swings and paranoia as their drug use intensifies. Alcohol abusers are especially prone to morning after hangovers. Now, here's skill number 2. Take a proactive role. Act as soon as you suspect a substance abuse problem. Don't assume it's fine to wait it out or that it's not your business. There are problems for supervisors. You may find yourself uncomfortable about intervening in a potentially explosive situation or concerned about straying outside the bounds of normal job responsibilities. You may not want to intrude or get personal. You may be unsure about the evidence or making wrongful accusations. And you may be confused about how to proceed or anxious about repercussions. But there are dangers of not taking action. The employee's health can and probably will decline over time. This could result in serious long-term crises adversely affecting coworkers, friends, and family. It could lead to more on-the-job accidents or near accidents, and it could set the stage for workplace violence. Here's how to be proactive. Passionately support and promote a drug-free environment. Familiarize yourself with organizational policies and specific DOT regulations. Review all written procedures and encourage discussion of these procedures in management meetings. And ensure that policies and procedures do not breed complacency. Here's a warning. Substance abusers are about 1/3 less productive than non-abusers, so ignoring the problem can impact your bottom line. And here's a tip. At staff meetings, reinforce to employees the details of your organization's substance abuse policy and the types of help available for individuals battling this problem. And distribute material with EAP contact information and other resources such as treatment programs, 24-hour phone hotlines, and other community programs. Did you know drug and alcohol-related problems cost companies more than $100 billion a year in lost productivity, accidents, absenteeism, increased health care costs, and workers' compensation claims? Is this statement true or false? As part of your proactive role as a supervisor, you should know how to diagnose drug or alcohol-related conditions and provide one-on-one counseling to employees who suffer from these problems. The answer is false. Your job is not to diagnose substance abuse problems. Instead, it is to refer employees to the proper resources so that they get professional help. Now let's look at skill number 3, document your suspicion. Proper documentation sets the stage for effective intervention to help an employee who's engaging in substance abuse. Let's look at the importance of documentation. You need to establish the history of the reasons for suspicion. As time passes, they may become unclear. By documenting instances of unacceptable performance or inappropriate behavior, other key players can understand the background and scope of the situation and make sound decisions on how to proceed. There are more options and more flexibility to managing the employee, and the organization will be protected from potential legal challenges. Let's look at some characteristics of effective documentation. It's timely. Write observations as soon as possible after the precipitating incident. They're fact-based. Answer who, what, where, why, how questions. Do not speculate on causes, propose possible diagnoses, or vent frustrations or disappointment. They're confidential. Store employee data in locked cabinets. Create a password-protected filter on your computer if permissible. And do not casually share information with even the most trusted friends or colleagues. Here's how you use the documentation. It can be a useful reference when meeting with the employee. By citing more than one instance of signs or symptoms, there is a detailed account of what led to the meeting. And it can help the employee accept the seriousness of the situation and the need to address it. For other documentation, document the reasons why you want an employee to submit to a drug or alcohol test. Summarize the basis of your reasonable suspicion using observable data, and omit any mention of your opinions or unsubstantiated impressions about the employee. Make objective observations only. Describe what happened, when it happened, and how it fell outside acceptable boundaries, and include only facts, not hunches. Here's an example. Rather than write, "Dave was stoned," write, "I smelled marijuana on Dave's breath at 1:10 p.m. while we waited together for the elevator to go from the parking lot to the office. His eyes were glassy and he was clutching the handrail. When the elevator door opened, he almost fell over as he walked in." Here's a warning. While some organizations provide forms or checklists for supervisors' use to document their observations, lack of such forms does not mean you can skip this important documentation step. In the absence of worksheets, record what you observed on a blank piece of paper and add it to the employee's personnel file. And here's a tip. Sign and date each piece of documentation. Ideally, this should reinforce your timeliness in writing your observations soon after they occurred. Did you know thorough documentation can help speed the employee's recovery from substance abuse? If the individual is referred for professional assistance, such as the EAP, a record of observations will help both the EA professional and the employee understand the history of the situation and spot patterns and behaviors that can lead to effective treatment. Is this statement true or false? Effective documentation for a particular incident or observation can consist of as little as 1 or 2 sentences. The answer is true. A single sentence is sufficient. As an example, Chris, who seemed alert and healthy all morning, left the meeting abruptly at 11 a.m. and returned at 11:10 a.m. looking dazed and dizzy while coughing frequently. Now let's turn to skill number 4, acting on the testing policy. Follow your organization's testing policy with consistency and the requirements established for your type of industry, if federally regulated, so that you can properly investigate an employee's suspected substance abuse. Review your employer's policy. The policy should explain how tests are administered, describe the drug screening process, list the steps that will follow a positive test result, communicate the organization's commitment to zero tolerance toward illegal drugs and alcohol in the workplace. Here's how to proceed. Your employer may require that you complete a form requesting that one of your employees submit to a drug or alcohol test. You will need to write your observations and include other information that triggered your reasonable suspicion. Remember, time is of the essence. Check your employer's policy. In most cases, you should refer the individual for immediate testing and accompany the employee to the test site. Now, here are some safety precautions. You may need to arrange transportation to the testing site and to the individual's home after the test is completed. This protects you and your employer from liability exposure. There will be resistance to testing. Inform the employee that refusal can be interpreted as a positive test result. Do not force the employee to submit to testing. Don't argue over necessity. Cite your organization's policy regarding employees who refuse may be subject to termination. Let them know that their action places them at risk of termination, and document the incident fully. Know the employee's rights. Check your company's policy. In some organizations, a designated employee serves as the coordinator of drug and alcohol testing procedures. This person acts as a liaison among all concerned parties, which can include you and other management personnel, the EAP, and human resources. And know your rights. As long as you have solid grounds for reasonable suspicion, you can refer an employee to get an immediate drug or alcohol test. Your policy may or may not require a second observation from another supervisor before you proceed. Your justification for testing must pass the reasonable and prudent rule. You have evaluated the situation fairly and taken appropriate action. Examine your evidence. Reasonable suspicion based on cumulative or long-term indicators is generally not sufficient to justify a test. However, if suspicion is based on specific, contemporaneous, articulable observations concerning the appearance, behavior, speech, or body odors of the employee, this merits a test. Here's a warning. Never conduct a drug or alcohol test on your own. It's prohibited by federal and state rules. Follow the procedures and proper steps. Refer the employee to an HR representative or other liaison who can ensure the test is performed promptly and accurately. And here's a tip. Keep an updated list of employees with safety-sensitive job duties, from driving vehicles to performing equipment maintenance, even if they only perform such functions as part of their overall work responsibilities. You have a heightened obligation to refer these employees for testing based on your reasonable suspicion. Did you know federal workers governed by the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services guidelines test positive for alcohol if the result is at or above 0.04 blood alcohol level? Many businesses and industry follow these guidelines. Now, let's look at skill number 5. Communicate your suspicion to the employee. Confronting your employee is never easy. Lay the groundwork for a smooth, decisive intervention. Examine your motivations. Concern for safety should override all other considerations. This is not a time for scolding, lecturing, or expressing disappointment. Your goal is to direct the individual to the proper channels consistent with your drug testing policy and procedures, so a drug test can be administered. Here's how to intervene. Ask an HR representative or another supervisor to join the meeting if your policy requires it. Hold the conversation in private and ensure confidentiality. And here's how to initiate the discussion. State your concern for the employee's behavior and describe what has been observed. Explain that you must follow the proper steps to arrange for reasonable suspicion testing. And emphasize the primary goal of safety and avoiding the negative repercussions of a drug or alcohol-related incident. Avoid the pitfalls. Resistant employees may try to shift blame or claim that they are being unfairly singled out. Take a consistent approach. Follow the written policy each and every time. Don't play favorites. Be observant of your employee upon return from treatment or an education program. Discuss the positive consequences of desired performance-related behavior and the negative consequences if performance-related behavior persists. Here's a warning. Never adopt an accusatory tone when confronting an employee. Steer clear of judgments. Focus on safety and sharing information relevant to reasonable suspicion, what can be documented and observed. Listen, but refer the employee according to your testing procedures. And here's a tip. In management meetings, conduct role plays where you and your colleagues simulate conversations with employees whom you suspect of engaging in substance abuse. Give each other constructive feedback and share ideas for expressing key points to employees in a firm yet diplomatic manner. Invite the EAP as a consultant. Did you know, if you confront an employee with another supervisor or manager at your side, you greatly increase the odds of staging a calm, rational dialogue. Most employees suspected of substance abuse are less likely to lash out against two supervisory personnel. Is this statement true or false? If you are absolutely sure of the nature of the employee's substance abuse problem, confronting the denial can be effective. The answer is false. This is the same as making a diagnosis. Your job as supervisor is to provide information and direction, referring the individual for testing. Now, let's look at reasonable suspicion. Excuses and more, 10 for the road.